Ready to get going in?
Yeah, you are, yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody. I call this meeting of the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee to order. We're meeting, at, DMRC building here and it's, August 10th, and time is 4:42. Okay, I guess first thing on the agenda, ask for an approval of the agenda. I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda for today.
So moved.
Okay, Tommy makes a motion. I hear a second.
Second.
Second by Lee Deal. Any discussion? Okay, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Opposed? Okay. Agenda's approved. Okay, next thing on the, approval of the minutes. Everybody take a chance to look at those from last meeting, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting as presented.
So moved.
Okay. Second. Then first and second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved.
All right, maybe we could just pause and do a quick introduction around, just,
Okay.
for the record there, yeah.
All right, introductions, Tommy? Okay.
John McCallum, Williams, Virginia.
Ben Johnson, Suffolk, Virginia.
Bad Ledford, Virginia Beach.
Richard Harden, Reedville.
J.C. Hudgens, Matthews.
Lee Deal, Eastville, Virginia. Don Porter, Texas.
Okay.
I think we have,
Diane Dowers, Diane Gier.
Okay. Dan, the only one on, Andrew?
I think Cody, are you there still?
Yeah, Cody Metcalf, Eastern Shore.
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all. Okay, how you want to go into discussion of potential additional harvest areas, Andrew, or?
Yeah, we can go with that, and then, just so, these are just sort of the areas, and then, if, talking to some of the folks, those are the areas, then we can hold off on discussing harvest in those areas till we get into sort of the, okay, yep, looks like Peyton's on his way there, but, then we can kind of discuss the harvest season after, approval of those areas or any kind of alterations or committee recommendations.
Okay.
And there's a couple things in between, but we can save that for that part of the discussion, yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, I'll, roll into that. So,
Okay.
this is just a discussion of the potential additional harvest areas. So at last, I guess it was last month's meeting, there was some discussion about looking at potentially taking some areas out of their current rotation cycle or portions of their areas, and also adding, additional areas. So the areas that were discussed, I think I've got them mapped correctly in the Pocomoke and Tangier Sound, let's see if I can get my laser pointer to work there. Whereas this lower or southern portion of the area that was in rotation last year that encompasses California, California rock there was the area that was discussed about looking at potentially changing opening dates to have a portion of that area open this year. And the Beasley's Bay area here in the Pocomoke Sound, just for reference, you have Bird Marshall's rock here, Johnson's rock here, and Thoroughfare is here. So it's just the areas that are monitored in the Pocomoke Sound, known as California. There's a number of areas there, and there isn't really a monitored area here in the Beasley Bay area that VMRC and VIMS looks at. But this is an area that doesn't really have much effort, and there was some desire to look at opening those areas. So I'll pause there and make sure those were the areas that were discussed. I think Dom was the one. Okay.
That's your area. You're gonna open these up when?
I think we can discuss that as part of the season. They just want to make sure the areas were confirmed there. Yeah. And Dan, just wanted to confirm that southern half, we'll call it, of that area is what you were referencing before?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other area that was discussed was a portion of, Larson's Bay in the Rappahannock, which is, a closed harvest area, bordered sort of on the, south by Area 3 and on the north by that sanctuary area. So this is a monitored sanctuary reef, and this is a roughed out sort of area that we could look at considering as we look at the discussions of the harvest season area. So there's no recent monitoring done in this area, but this is the sanctuary area sort of north of this line that we would likely not be comfortable with opening, as that would be sort of encroaching on that constructed sanctuary area there. So it's sort of the offshore area. And I think there's sort of a point there is a good reference there, and then run straight across. Yep, and that runs sort of due east, or as close to due east as I could, just to give folks a good reference point there, drawing that line.
Tom, is this the closed area you talked about in 99? Is that
Yes.
the same area?
Yeah, I mean, back then, we had talked about part of it in 2 and part of it in 3, so, but yes, that's.
Okay. All right, well, I know from the Waterman side, we certainly thank staff for looking into this. I know this is gonna be an important piece, I think. I think everybody is anxious to take a look at it, you know, and so we appreciate all the work that Shellfish Group is put into this. This is all new, you know, so we need it this year, so I think it's gonna work out a good time.
Andrew, is there any wiggle room in that northernmost point or northeasternmost point to the north?
Potentially a little bit. Is there
There's a little area, or not a little area, a fairly productive area that used to be there historically off of that little creek, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never worked there, but I've been told that historically it was a good area.
Okay, I think the main thing is sort of staying in a marked area away from that sanctuary area. And just so this committee's aware, that this area was surveyed close to 20-something years ago. And I spoke with some of the folks who were conducting that survey, and what it is based on that 20-year-old survey is a lot of lumps. There's not really a large continuous rock there, but it's a lot of those lumps mixed in with muddier, softer bottom. So that's probably the bottom that we're working with. So it would be an area that there wouldn't be a large area that would be suitable for a large shell plant. It's a lot of sort of small areas, very mixed up, is my understanding of that.
What do you estimate the acreage was?
This is over 400 acres this area here. It's a pretty large area, yeah.
Mosquito Point, does it go all the way to the shore pretty much there?
Yeah. It basically goes to the corner of Area 2. So that would sort of be this offshore line would follow the closed harvest area there, and that north line, we could adjust that a little bit if needed.
The northwest, the most deepest part, do you know how deep the water was there?
It would probably vary, but it would drop right off that edge all the way to the channel there. So it would come right up to the line, basically, of Area 3 there.
Okay.
It drops off pretty sharp there, JC, just to the right of that 9, where those barges, just offshore where those barges are moored.
Yeah, it probably goes, 15, 17 feet down to 40 pretty quick, yeah.
Right on 40 feet towards Mosquito Point.
The area that's more traditional, non-broken bottom, that would not be lumps, would be closer to the northern, coming on up from the sanctuary up to
that line there.
this point, yeah. There and on the other side of the sanctuary, in there.
Mm-hmm.
How much private bottom is in there, Andrew?
Most of the inshore side of Baylor, so.
Okay.
His grandson.
Most of the shallow water.
Yeah.
It must be raining more.
Yeah. Hopefully the power stays on here and it doesn't start raining inside, so. So that was the sort of proposed area, there, and I think we discussed, that, but it sounds like there's more of a desire to work closer to that sanctuary area, sort of on either side of it. And
Yeah, I wouldn't say up to it, but on either side of it.
Mhm.
I think that's
20
probably,
feet maybe, something like that, yeah.
Over the regulation, I mean, we've got a further than 100-foot regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
no.
I would say more than 100 feet.
Mhm.
It would certainly be easier to, go along with that pat dog as opposed to scraping, you know, it would be kind of difficult with the 100-foot deal, you know, we had some problems with that in the past.
Okay. Well, that's something we can look at a map on, and we do have some, hopefully, some fairly recent, bathymetric data from NOAA that we should be looking at here soon to identify what that bottom actually looks like from their resurvey of the Rappahannock that was conducted this summer. So we can look at that and try to identify areas that aren't patchy, and aren't the sanctuary, and
And
look at
y'all
that.
gonna look at this, first part of October, survey was?
Yes, yep. So we can have a season potentially have a season on the books and make adjustments to it based on that survey. And again, this is an area that hasn't really had any harvest for 20-plus years now,
Yeah.
more than that, so.
Probably 1988.
Mhm.
How does the sanctuary look, Andrew?
Very good. So it's I don't have those numbers pulled up, but as good as better parts of the harvest areas in that area. So 20-30 markets per square meter. So what I'm hearing is to look at readjusting this, but this is a general area, but as close as staff and law enforcement would be comfortable with getting to that sanctuary area and staying. I think one of the things that we definitely do is not have any area inshore of the sanctuary open. That creates confusion, between private and public and enforcement. So that's sort of a cleaner thing to do. And we can look at buffering in a safe way around it and,
It gets shallow in there pretty quickly, too.
mhm.
Andrew, is that yellow line in there, is that the sanctuary, kind of?
This is the area that's monitored, and is, designated sanctuary, yeah, by our markers there.
But in between where you've got mark for the triangle and shoreline, kind of is a sanctuary?
I can try to zoom in a little bit there, maybe, but, you're talking this, zoom right back out on me. This is the sanctuary area there. I guess you can't really see it up there, but, that right there. And this is the closed harvest area now, so this isn't in rotation, this entire area.
That anchor booth for the lay bars there, where is that located?
Right,
Corner?
right about there somewhere, I think.
In the middle, okay,
Yep.
okay.
And there is that other reef, that's part of the Norris Bridge, kind of right on that offshore edge as well.
that's further to the east there, towards the ski point.
Mhm. So it's sort of right on that edge of that area there. I think it's like right kind of in there, right? So I can, take a look at this a little more closely and, early next week, send a revised map out to the group, after we discuss that, sort of see what thoughts are on that. But I guess, some of this area, regardless of how much is open, would be favorable, what I'm gathering. And I think on a staff level, of course, nothing in that sanctuary area or sort of any kind of structure continuous to that. And I think as Tommy had mentioned, one of the concerns about this area initially proposed was this could be where some of the brood stock is coming from in the Rappahannock. But again, Rappahannock does have a lot more oysters today than it did when those discussions were first going on, so.
Any more discussion on lost and Bay? Any questions from the public? Everybody cool?
Anything Jim's wanted to say on that, or no?
Okay, Andrew, move on to the next one.
All right. And this is just, to let the committee be aware of some additional, sort of regulatory tweaks. I wouldn't really call them changes, but clarifying a couple things in regulation, both for, an enforcement perspective and sort of a little bit of a deregulatory perspective as well. When it comes to licensing and limits, right now in regulation, the way it reads and the way it is enforced is that if you're the user fee holder on a boat and you're the license holder on, I will call it a vessel to be official, on a vessel, you're the one operating the gear. So for enforcement purposes, it's not always clear who's operating the gear in a dredge boat or a patent tong boat necessarily, or a scrape boat, but it is clear on a hand tong boat who's actually operating the gear. So we wanted to kind of make things consistent and change that a little bit this year. So, and this hasn't been approved by the commission. This isn't a hard, fast change. It will be if the commission votes on it later in August, but this is one of the proposed changes is that right now, if you have a user fee, or the change would be if you have a user fee and a gear license, you're entitled to that individual limit like you always were. The vessel limits are unchanged from last year, is what we're proposing, so the 28 hand tong and 16 for all the other gears. Vessels and individuals are only going to be permitted. There was some discussion back and forth, and it makes enforcement a little bit difficult. If vessels and boats are jumping from one fishery to another to keep track of that, if some boats are going hand scraping, can that same boat with different people then go pat tonging, or can you catch 16 bushels hand scraping and then go hand tonging for another, you know, however many you can catch there, another, I guess it would be 6 a person. And to sort of clarify that, the change would be that any individuals or vessels can only use one gear type in the public fishery on any single day. So you basically have to decide what you're going to fish in for that day. The change that I spoke of there earlier is the person working the gear doesn't necessarily have to hold a license or user fee, but a user fee and a license holder must be on that vessel. So if you have 2 user fees on that boat, you can get 2 limits. But whoever's catching those oysters doesn't necessarily have to be the license holder. So in a hand tonging vessel, you could have someone else actually operating the tongs as long as those persons were on the boat and they were the ones responsible for those oysters. On the seaside of the Eastern Shore, it's a little bit different because a lot of that harvest isn't actually undertaken in a vessel. So the person actually harvesting oysters would have to be harvesting by hand, not in a vessel, not using any type of gear, would actually have to be the license holder. This is also one of the fisheries that isn't limited there. So that's the by hand only harvest is a user fee that anyone can still get, and they'd actually have to hold that user fee to harvest those oysters and have a commercial card.
Andrew, how would the limit work on a shaft tonging seed boat where there is no limit? Would you have one license and you could have other people tonging without a license?
That would be my understanding. It's still a quota managed fishery, so that quota would sort of be the control, the harvest control, rather than that vessel limit rate.
So you could have 2 people, one licensed and unlicensed on a seed boat, as long as there's one license on the seed boat? Okay. Thank you for your clarification.
Okay, any other discussion on licensing and limits?
And this is gonna be taken up next Tuesday?
The Tuesday after next, I think, 22nd. Yeah. Got the dates right on that. And the committee we can vote on this or not. It would be a.
Okay.
I have one question for Andrew. Was it an issue last season before, people going power dredging or patent tonging and then going hand tonging?
There were just a handful of folks doing it. I think there was just some confusion on what they could do, and from a resource perspective, it might encourage sort of diversification in gear usage if people sort of use one gear rather than doing both. So it helps keep things split up. So that was a concern. On the enforcement side, it's hard to keep that up day to day, I think, of did you only catch 7 bushels, or did you catch 6, and boats jumping around, so it just sort of makes things clear.
Okay, Tom?
I would move that the committee adopt these recommendations and forward to the commission.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Kellum, we accept these licenses. Second by Peyton. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Anyone against? Motion passed. Andrew?
All right.
Hey, Andrew, on that, would you still be able to, hand tone your clean call limit and still be able to seed the same day?
I would say the way the regulation is worded right now, I would say yes, but I'll have to clarify with law enforcement, but I think it's mostly the gear type. We wouldn't be able to 2-pile, so there's.
I know we can't 2-pile, but I just didn't know if we could go put out our clean calls and go back and see.
I would lean towards yes, but I'll confirm and looking at the regulatory language if it's clear there, yeah. All right,
Get into discussion of the public oyster harvest system, Andrew?
if you're ready for it.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna tackle it, don't we? My thoughts, Andrew, we'll start at James River and just go down from the top down, and we'll take each group.
Okay,
each section.
okay.
Okay, is that okay with you? And
Yeah, I have a little bit of overview of some of the stuff, and we can, once we go over, there were some questions asked from last year about other information, and I always try to look at it as the whole season at once, but definitely, that's usually how we'd start there, is go through, the sort of draft proposal and then pick it out from there.
Okay, all right, I'd like to start off in James River. The hand scrape, from mid-October to, February, areas 2, 3, and 1, all the same. Anybody have any discussion, changes, Peyton, you got anything?
I have a couple things I could think of, if you want me to go first.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. I would be in favor of staggering 1 and 2 and 3, so we could effectively have a 5-month season instead of a 4.5-month.
Maybe move it out to March, maybe.
That's right, and maybe even start October 1st. I mean, the James River's got a lot of oysters. And from someone who works the James a lot,
Right.
it seems like there's a large concentration of people working from Deep Creek to the bridge, and below the bridge doesn't really seem to get work unless you have to.
Okay.
So maybe just spread out the fleet and do something like that.
So move area 1 over to March and open area 2 and 3 up at 1st October?
Or something similar.
Right.
Maybe somebody else can
Yeah,
chime
well,
in, but.
Okay, Ben?
3's below the bridge, right?
Correct.
Oh,
What is it, just for
2 is Ballast Marsh.
I'm not familiar.
2 is Ballast Marsh and 1 is Thomas's side.
Gotcha,
North
okay.
side of the channel.
Okay.
In the past, we'd split it up and stretched it that way, above and below the bridge. And we went back after people decided they'd rather go back, so we have done that in the past. And it, I guess, from a staff perspective, every time you're stretching the season, that is spreading out effort, but it's really shifting effort from one area to another area, and you're getting more effort, I guess, as opposed to spreading out effort, because more oysters are leaving from more areas.
Andrew, is there any regulation or anything in code that would prevent us from oystering 1st October?
No, there is not, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I remembered something in code about
Well,
October 15th, but I couldn't remember it. October 1st.
Yeah, I guess October 1st is when, the hand tong season starts, and there is no codified season for hand scrape. That gear type does not exist in code.
Okay.
The overall public harvest season is codified in code.
Okay.
October 1st, no later than April.
Ben, you worked on that whole time. You got any suggested changes or?
I would have to say I agree with Peyton on that. I mean, it would be, I mean, and just as a general, not necessarily looking at just James River, but the fact that there's nothing in the hand scrape, nothing in the mechanized harvest for the month of March, I don't agree with.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I think,
Whether it's, I mean, and shifting that is a simple piece of a solution to it. in my opinion.
Hey, Andrew,
I guess, go ahead there, Cody.
I would be all for, any extension into the month of, March over, October. I would rather see it on the back end if you were gonna give any extension, or if we did swing it that way, because it always seems like it's a little bit funny in October, especially if there's not anything else opened up. A bunch of boats show up and there's really not market for all the oysters yet.
Yeah, I guess, before we get too far down the line, I think that staff isn't really comfortable at this point with discussing seasons in March for these areas that typically, until last year, have only had 3 or 4 months in them. So I think what we did last year, or at least attempted to do last year, which was to hold a meeting in January or December to make that decision. So I'd prefer, if the committee could advise on sort of the core season that you see here, and with a commitment from both the committee and staff to look at these areas, look at harvest effort, and do something similar to what we've done last year. We can always close the season early, I guess, is the other aspect, but we'll have better information to make a more informed decision. And given the level of the resource and what we know happens when the areas are open to scrape, which I did have to show you guys, if we are opening these areas for longer, there's gonna be oysters removed, they're there. So we're going to be taking more. We all know that. So I think it's maybe more prudent of us to sort of look at the first half of the season and then come back with an updated survey information of all these areas, rather than making a decision on March now, when a lot can happen between now and then.
Rich?
I'll just clarify, you say January, and reevaluate January?
Well, I think we kind of discussed about that last year, about having a commission meeting in February, and we came back with an emergency by public comment extension in January. So I think if there's maybe clarification on this group and when you'd like to have that discussion, to look at any extension past February. We could do it in January, but since we already have a season now going through February, we would have the best information to act based on any weather conditions, anything like that in February, rather than doing it twice.
So are you saying that you'd be better informed in February if we did that meeting in February?
Yeah, I think if we had a commission hearing scheduled in February, SMAC could meet in January and then again in February. We typically do anyway, and that would cover us for the replenishment plan and any season discussions. But the commission, there'd be mechanized full harvest season already all the way through February, which is an extension from previous seasons already.
Would that give it time to be adjusted without having to be an emergency regulation?
I'd like to get away from that.
Having to advertise it, and that's was the point of what we tried to do last year that never got accomplished.
Yeah.
We went, the last 2 years, it's been an appeal for an emergency regulation, and there's no sense in it functioning that way.
Right, I think we had scheduled and planned for a February meeting last year, which was what we did, and we did that by non-emergency. There was
a February meeting won't give the commission time to have a season in March without it being an emergency action.
No, the season, what makes a public, an emergency action is not advertising for it. So if we are planning for it, we can advertise, and the commission can take action without emergency there in February. So if it's not advertised, then that's what makes it an emergency. If we don't go through the public notice 2-week period running advertisements, that's what makes it an emergency regulation. We can plan for it, and we can act in February, and it can become effective that day.
I don't disagree with that line as long as staff lives up. I mean, I made the motion last year to have a January meeting, and it was ignored. We did not have, I mean, it was forced into an emergency regulation last year due to inaction of this committee in the proper time. But the one, I don't disagree with looking at the latter half of the season, but I do think we have to have discussion. I like Peyton's idea, but to act on the possibility of extending into March, if I understood Peyton's suggestion correctly, we would talk about not opening one of these areas in October. So I would think we need to have that discussion so that we're not sitting here January or February saying, well, we can't do this because we opened it in October, when a condition of extending the season is to also keep an area closed in the beginning of the season. So I think we at least need to have that discussion.
Yeah, good idea, Tom. And when I seen the schedule, I was concerned when I didn't see anything for the month of March, Andrew. So, because I don't like coming down here like we've been doing the last couple of years and asking for, and I don't think the commission likes it, you know. I think they would rather us handle it in this committee, you know, which I think is the proper channel to do it, you know, and I think that's the direction that we need to go in. Don't you guys, you know?
And just for reference, the 2021 season and the 2022 season, for the James River are shown here. So, I guess, it's 3 months versus the proposed season right now, which was 4.5 months. So we're already harvesting this area in the James River for 1.5 months longer than we have been in the recent past.
Yeah.
Mr.
So,
Chairman, but that is on paper, that's not actual effort.
Right, yeah. So,
That was just a suggestion, JC, of what I thought, James, and I agree with Cody, maybe the oysters could be better utilized in March versus in, opening all of October.
I mean, how do y'all feel about that, losing October and picking up March? I mean,
Well, excuse me, I didn't mean losing all of October, I meant not starting October first, starting October 15th,
okay.
like we're already planning.
Yeah, that's what schedule, yeah.
That's what I meant.
But excuse me,
Yes, sir.
having one of the areas in James River not open for that mid-October, right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Oh, well, that's maybe what we could discuss.
Yeah.
But Cody made a good point that the oysters might be more useful in March than they are in the 1st of October.
I agree, but if we don't have anything open in October, mid-October, but you'll have Rappahannock open mid-October, guess where everybody's going?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem.
You understand what I'm saying?
I don't.
So I'm just saying, there's not a hand scrape area in James River, but there is in Rappahannock, everybody's going to Rappahannock.
Okay, Rich, what I mean is start October 15th in
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
October.
Yeah, that'd be fine, as long as something is open in up the bay and down the bay.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
And you're saying shift one area, not the whole thing?
Correct,
That's
correct.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're on the same page, I think.
So Andrew, the area below the bridge is area 3.
correct, yeah.
So just for discussion purposes, Peyton's recommendation, we would be looking at area 1 and 2 together, and then area 3 is separate, correct?
Yes. That would give us that, above and below the bridge. And talking to some other harvesters, just so this group is aware, I've had those conversations, and some of their concerns are weather-wise. When it's all open together, you have more options to work versus just below the bridge, depending on conditions, so. But again, those are just comments that I've heard when we've done this in the past and had it split up that way.
Which Nanzeman would be in that area, that lower 3. So, I mean, there is somewhere to work as well.
You got a little bumpy boat ride, but you got somewhere to work.
Okay.
What does everybody else think? That was my thought.
I like that idea.
I agree with you, Peyton.
I agree with you as well, shift it.
So how do you want to do this, Andrew?
So you're looking at a SMAC recommendation of, right now, hypothetically, 2 weeks in October and shifting area, 3 to 2 weeks in March? So just okay.
And while we're on the topic of James River, I'd like to throw out possibly extending the clean coal hand tong maybe into, maybe 15 days into May,
Mm-hmm.
which is something we've talked about, but it kind of got shoved under the rug.
Andrew?
The committee's welcome to discuss that. I think, again, that gets into warm weather harvest months is one of the concerns. It's,
If you're handling one more the harvest on the front end, you can handle it on the back end.
I'm not saying that we couldn't, right.
That's my thought on that, that's not an excuse not to do something.
Right. Okay. Any more discussion on?
Anybody, got any concerns about that messing up? You know, a lot of the harvesters get their seed in May from the hand tongs, so they quit clean culling, and everybody goes and catches what seed that's left. Just a thought.
Well, it might take some effort off of seed, if you have a few folks staying clean culling, it might take some effort off of seed. It make the seed last longer, would be a way to look at it. And I'd like to apologize for everybody, it seems like I'm asking for a lot when it comes to James River, but I promise I don't have so many comments when it comes to everything else.
You wanna look at that in January, Andrew, or?
Again, anything sort of changes from the last 5 years of status quo that happened after February, we'll have better information to make those decisions, in January. And I guess, just to clarify there, it seems like January would be when this committee would like to meet again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's second week in January, maybe something like that. Okay.
And then the commission can have a
Technically, on this schedule, only change would be area 3, moving 2 weeks into March, right? Everybody go with that? Okay, right. All right, we'll just leave it at that, Andrew, and we'll come back and we'll vote on the whole thing.
Been coming off for 2 weeks in October.
Right, yeah. Just shifting it, okay? All right, let's see, go ahead,
Never mind, I lost my train of thought there. I'll try to get you there.
let's see, okay, seed horses, I guess it's no discussion there. Thank you, guys, anything? Okay. All right, let's move on to, York, Hand-Tong area, everything okay? Are they okay with that? November, December, January, February, and actually March, so it's 5 months on the Hand-Tong area. Okay. All right, let's go on to the Mobjack. I was kind of surprised to see this, Andrew, especially for 2 months.
We skipped over, York 1.
Oh, yeah, that's under mine, that's next.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Yeah,
My bad.
I mean, the one I got, I don't know if everybody else. Okay. This is one Andrew's, I know, the one today is a little bit different. Yeah, I guess one question I got, Andrew, as chairman here is why there's no hand scrape season in York, area 1.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on that, why for that?
Well, I guess the answer is this is an area that, given the condition of other hand scrape areas, it would potentially take some pressure off there, but it has been open now for, I guess, 2 years to hand tong, and has supported 10 to 20 boats, depending on the day, in combination with that. Doesn't need any replenishment and has been able to be open. If we do open it to hand scrape, it's a particularly shallow area that's difficult to replenish, and would take replenishment effort and dollars away from potentially expanding other areas as we have been doing. So that's the reason for this, is it's still producing oysters. It's taking those 10 to 20 boats out of primarily the James River is where most of those folks would be going. And it doesn't require any replenishment effort. And I guess having the Mobjack open would be experiment, if we will, on 2-year rotations. It might answer some questions on that.
Yeah, but they're not gonna last 2 months. I mean, it might get a couple of weeks there, you know. You're talking about toe steak and pulse.
Yeah, and we're actually looking at, potentially, those are the very small areas there, sort of areas above Browns Bay, and between those areas, there's some more area that might be available, and we could look at expanding those areas as we've done in Milford Haven, to make those areas a little bit bigger outside of just those 2 very small rocks, which did produce pretty well when they were last open in the rotation, comparatively.
My thoughts was, I was thinking of maybe trying to trade one of the months on the Mobjack over into the York, just 1 month on hand scrape, there in area 1, because that hasn't been worked in hand scraping for years, right? This is regular rotation on it?
It would be the normal rotation, and, I think the last time,
It was pretty
fly
good
back
numbers
there. It was open for a month, to hand scrape last, in this last rotation cycle there. And that's kind of been, probably a comfort level in terms of having a hand tong
Yeah.
season there at first. And, again, this area after it was open to hand scrape was replenished, so usually it does need it. So it wouldn't be as good hand tong bottom at some point here, yeah.
Everywhere with hand scrape, we gotta replenish, so, I mean, that's, you know, it's just necessary evil. Thomas?
Mr. Chairman, I see Mr. Green here that's pretty active in the York River. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'd like to hear his thoughts on that.
Or you talking about Mason Rock? Is that
Yeah.
there?
You wanna come on up there? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Jamie?
Well, I mean, it's been very productive for shaft tongers, but I think a lot of it has to do with the scrapers coming in the year before, and, they've broken a lot of it up and cleaned a lot of it up. It's, you know, cultivated it pretty much, and I think without doing that, it's gonna get a lot more wrapped up as what we were starting to see last year. It's a lot more, and every year you don't touch it's gonna get that much,
I got you.
you know.
Yeah.
So this is
So
one of
are
those
you
deals.
Are you in favor of?
I think maybe the last month or so,
Hand scrape?
let it hand scrape and clean it back up again for the next year, yeah. At least 1 month on
Your
it.
suggestion would be hand tong it for the
First, yeah.
for the first part of the season.
Or if, hand scraping is, hand tong them the first and then let it clean up at the end and break everything up again. Be nice, I mean, looks like a lot of areas open for hand tonging,
A
yeah.
shot at it before you
Yeah.
went for the 20 working days or whatever.
Yeah. And then that way, with the hand scrapes can break up and cultivate at the end,
Right.
be towards the summer and get the spat on it again, what does happen there.
And the area that was removed from the scrape area, the hand tong area, what we're calling York hand tong area now, that would be open as normal when, no changes there. So if somebody really wanted to hand tong that month, they would still, is that a pretty good area?
Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it started to, do the same thing a little bit last year, and, where the guys was having trouble with, keeping them cleaned up. But, yeah, they still a good area to work, very good.
Okay. So Andrew, what month would you be comfortable with? January, February?
I think usually February has been when those areas have been open to kind of, when things are starting to get worked down to have a new area come online. Seems to have worked well.
Hey, Casey,
Wait, babe?
I wonder what you would think about, opening Mob Jack and York River One at the same time to have that breakup of effort. Okay,
My jack is scheduled for January, February.
gotcha.
Yep. So it'll be over the same time.
And that we could, shorten that season into Mob Jack too, I guess, have a 1 month, 1 month.
Okay.
Or leave it out of the rotation, it would come on into the rotation next month, because there wouldn't be,
Yeah, leave it in January and it just sort of,
Well-
that's my thoughts, do away with February.
I think, I guess if, it wouldn't normally be in this rotation, so if we're putting the normal rotation back in, we could just strike it.
Right.
That would give us something for next year when there isn't anything in the York River scheduled.
Jan, we're talking about, February scratching Mob Jack? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Or just that whole,
Yeah, that's right.
that whole season in Mob Jack,
But he's talking about doing maybe both months in the month.
and leaving it on the normal rotation cycle there.
More discussion on that, how's everybody feel with that? I mean, I'm sure it's some horses there, it's not, don't know, these other areas of Browns Bay you're talking about, I've worked toe stake in Paul Spa, and I know they caught quite a few horses at Paul Spa, for a couple of weeks, I think it was last year, wasn't it? Yeah. So,
The year before last, yeah.
before last,
Or
2 years, yeah.
season before last.
Just need a clarification, so Mob Jack won't be open at all next in both months or just February away?
Well, that's the proposal right now from Andrew, I don't know.
You know, I would say it makes sense to leave them both months closed so that it is a logical area to have open in rotation next year when, to Andrew's point, the York is closed. And it certainly will be other options available, those months for people to work and still set that aside as an area for next season.
Okay. All right, everybody, okay with that?
I agree.
All right, go on to the next one then. Okay, Milford Haven, I guess that's pretty standard, no problem. Jamie, you okay with that? Let's see, let's talk about Deep Rock. Let's see, you got November, December, January, and February. Okay, what do you want to do about March on that, Andrew? I mean, you want to come back in January and look at that for March again?
I think, again, this was, until last year, typical of 3-month season. We're already giving it 4 extra weeks, so it'd probably be good to have.
Very light pressure, yeah. It's really.
And March is when that area sees the most pressure, I guess, and right now we have, that area as a standalone area in February, so, for Pat and
Most
Tony.
people watch on and keep having the boats. David will keep us informed, I'm sure. Tommy?
Would we want to talk about taking November off if there's a possibility of looking at March?
Yeah, I guess we could, you know, I mean, because area one's gonna be open.
I feel like myself, you know, pushing it to March would, from the industry standpoint, the oysters would be tremendously better down to the market in March than they are in October down there, or November, either one.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of that because I think that, like you said, it'd be better quality. And I think they'll be better market for them that time of year.
Sure.
I would take it off of November,
Move it to March.
move it to March.
What do you think, David? I know you want November probably, but, I mean, you got area one.
Well, not many boats go there in November.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know it. I mean, it's really such light pressure, it really doesn't warrant a closing, you know, I mean.
That's just my opinion.
Probably won't be 3 boats, probably you and your dad and Jimmy Dean, probably the only 3, you know.
Normally, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things that I guess a month in November, as you said, is very different than a month in March. 3 boats is different than 30. So I think from staff perspective, probably okay leaving it as it is now, and then one of those things to readdress at a February commission meeting with, after SMAC weighs in, that second week in January. I wanna make sure I got that right. Second week in January, SMAC, February commission meeting, okay.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think a motion, second week of January, we reconvene, have a meeting.
That's what I mean. Okay, we got a motion that we reconvene in second week of January for SMAC meeting to look at, the rest of the oyster fishery season. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes, Andy.
Okay.
Okay, all right, David, you got November. All right, let's look at the Rappahannock now. That's a big goal there. Let's see, area one, got 2 weeks in October, in November, December, and January. Everybody's thoughts, discussion on that?
Again,
Tom? Is that same as been for what, last 3 years, Andrew?
Last year, this area was extended through February, 2 weeks.
February,
Yeah. Let me pull up last year's season actually here, just so we can look at what we did there. So this is with the extension, so last year, area one went through 2 weeks into March.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, Andrew. In area one, would staff entertain the idea, just like Mr. Green's saying,
you know, it's been Pat Tong for years, maybe putting towards the end or something, a small drudge season, 2 weeks or something on it, to help break it up?
Generally, no. I think this area, what we've seen with these scrape areas in the Rappahannock is, I know breaking it up creates more marketable oysters quickly, but it's much harder if it is over harvested to take it back to a less efficient gear type. I think that what we see in post-harvest surveys, which I'm glad to show you, is this area doesn't need any replenishment. We would risk having an area that would need replenishment at that in the Rappahannock. So I think
I agree with that, but as a buyer, I know over the years, and some of these watermen have noticed it too, that the quality is just a little off than it used to be. You know? And,
You get too many horses.
and it's getting too many of them, like Butler's Hole and all, it's just wrapped up. I just thought, for myself personally, in my shore, I drudge it, it helps it out, makes it a better quality and longer lasting in the long run. Mr. Green touched on that a little bit. Just thought maybe I don't wanna damage it, I don't wanna mess up what we have, but just touch base with it a little bit, maybe drudging, breaking up a little bit, a 2-week time frame, nothing more than that, towards the end. It's just something to entertain. You have any comments?
I mean, I would support that and monitor it heavy, and there's a debate on what, you know, how we're managing it. I think 2 weeks, if it's as good as what Andrew's indicating, certainly wouldn't hurt it, but I agree the quality gets to a point that it's, we talk about replenishing, you know, we harvest and replenish a good area. I really don't see the difference in that and creating a new area that you start from scratch. We're still replenishing and still trying to produce oysters. So, it's always a crawl on my side. This was a decision that was made strictly by staff to make this Pat Tong area. It was never recommendation of this committee. So just to look at what data you could collect from a 2-week season, to Rich's point, I would.
Ben?
Well, I think this committee has been unanimous on the recommendations of past seasons, in most cases, when this area has been included
When
as
it
a bad
was offered to us as the only option.
I would just like to say, and somewhat to Tommy's point, but sitting here listening to this discussion on this season so far, we as a committee, every time we have a recommendation, the first thing that's been asked was, would staff approve? We do not need staff's approval to make a recommendation. We are separate from staff. We can present our recommendation with our information, our concerns, our whatever it is, to the commission, and then staff can commit theirs, and the commission make the decision.
Right.
This doesn't have, it's great if it can leave here as a unanimous, everybody on board, but it does not have to.
Right.
If there's something this committee wants or feels is best, it needs to be presented that way.
Yeah, I understand, you know, and I have mixed feelings on it, you know, I mean, I Pat Tong there, and, you know, I kinda hate, you know, I don't think a 2-week season would hurt it, you know, and it might help it, you know, but I like having the option of having the funds that we normally would replenish there, we're able to put into the other areas in the Rappahannock, which is, some areas, you know, really need it, you know, so that's a big help there. But, it's just, you know, to have a set-aside area there for the Pat Tong boats, you know, I mean, we've tried it in some other areas too on the Pat Tong side, so it, you know, it's either not here or there as far as I'm concerned, you know, but I mean, whatever this committee wants to do, you know,
And just for discussion purposes, I think Tommy had asked last meeting to have some additional information on harvest there, and I have that if you'd like to see that for these areas. But
I have a point to add to what Rich said. It might be quite complicated, but I agree with adding a 2-week dredge season for Area 1. I wonder if instead of adding it at the end, we add it maybe in the middle while it's concurrent with another strong area, such as area 7 or 8. So instead of having all the boats flock to area 1 in March, maybe the 10, 12 boats that are working there patent-owning can put their dredge rigs on, or put their dredges on for 2 weeks to break it up, and then go back to patent-owning. So effectively, try to avoid going from 10 boats to 70 boats, but still effectively breaking up the area over that 10-week period.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Rich?
I agree, Peyton, I agree when I was gonna say that, we should do it when it's not gonna be like a standalone area.
Right.
And where it won't be everybody flock to it, just to, you know, I know this is a sore subject and, you know, I, as a buyer, I just know the point of view, I know over the years that the quality's gone down. And I just thought, you know, for me, working on private shore and like what other people, Mr. Green says, and, you know, drudging it up helps it a little bit every now and then. And you're talking about if you drudge it, you gotta replenish it. I think drudging it will help replenish it, because you're breaking it up.
I'll make a comment on that one.
Sure, sure, Dave, come on.
Why y'all wanna mess up a good thing? That ain't been touched in 3 years with a drudge, and you've been working there on through March with it, and you're getting your limit on it. Why you wanna mess up a good thing? It don't make good sense. If you had to take your money and your money that to resell and stock it at your pocket, you wouldn't go for that. Now, would you?
I do that on my own private ground every year.
Your private ground, right, but you wouldn't do it on
You're
public
asking
ground.
what I do with my money, I do it with my money.
All of y'all, you wouldn't take money out of your pocket and put it on an area that you're gonna drug.
Respectively, sir, if the oysters can't be sold, there's no sense in catching them. And
Well, why can't it be sold?
well,
They're being sold, I don't see no problem getting sold.
2 large buyers up here are saying that the quality's going down, it's becoming harder to sell. And it's
Well, I
going
talked
down.
to Shannon Green and the boys when they're working, they say it's just pretty to go on, so I don't go along with that. I patent on these places. If you got a patent on place, leave it alone, don't drudge it. It's doing good. Why you wanna mess up a good thing?
What type of gear do you use,
I
sir?
patent on all my
Okay,
life.
thank you.
All
Okay.
season long,
What's that?
all season long.
All year round, I do. I know what a drudge would do. You know, don't you, my friend? You've been on the seaside, tell the boys what a drudge would do.
I know what a glam drudge does.
I ain't got nothing against the oyster judges, I'm glad for the boys, but you got a patent on bottom, leave it patent on. It cannot stand 2 weeks of a drudge.
It was standing 3 months with the drudge.
Patent
What
on.
once you go there with a drudge with a patent on, you'll find out what it would do.
Ask
You won't find out.
staff about the
I ain't
first
gonna
6
ask
years of
nobody nothing.
rotation.
I came behind that drudge, my friend, when they
You can't
drug
stand
sheetrock.
2 weeks of drudging, it needs to be closed all the way.
I
Do
came
you have
behind
private
that
shore,
drudge.
sir? Do you have private shore?
I do not.
Well, we have private shore, and we work it up, drudge,
And
and
you
it
got,
helps out in
and
the
you
long
got to
run.
reshell and stock it too. You got to put shells on it.
When I drudge and break it up, I wind up getting more off of it, it works, helps work in the long run. Not asking too much and not trying to take away at all, just trying to help out patent owners in the long run.
You're not, hey, you put a drudge on Pantone body, you ain't.
Not for
putting no
long, 2
Pantone.
weeks.
Now, I know that for a fact. I seen it, I took Mr. Weston there, when they drudged it and took it for seed. They didn't take it for seed, they took it off deep rock. And I had taken him in my boat and showed him what he did. He didn't believe me. Then, and Andrew was about to stir you up. He said, go ahead, you can have your Pantone, David. It took her a long time to come back. They worked her for 4 weeks. And when they drudged her, she looked like gravel. And she did, and I took him there and showed it to him. When you got a Pantone bottle, leave the drudge off of her. She'll always come back. But you put that drudge on her, you're gonna see a difference. JC knows it, every Pantone knows it. Shannon Green, the boys, all them boys, they went drudging, told me, David, I never would have put a drudge in a wrap hand if I had known this. I said, well, you didn't know it. And we all get along, hey, we're all getting along.
For me, the suggestion is that patent owning is good because you work by yourself and you're not in a fleet of boats.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody likes patent tongue better. It's better for everything, Mr. Keller.
Well, why
Not for
is
your pocketbook.
why is the fleet, my pocketbook's the same regardless of where the resource comes from.
Leave
If
it
it's so
alone.
great, why are
Leave the patent tongue bottom alone. We need that bottom, we do, and JC knows it.
I'm not gonna interact.
All right, David, thank you, I appreciate it. I know that this is a hot button issue.
Well, JC, you speak up, cause you've been behind.
Yeah, well, I can't vote, and I understand, and I spoke my part, you know, I think, you know.
It's a self-serving comment.
Yeah, it is, and, you know,
Well, I tell you what, 3 years haven't been touched, y'all spent $2.3 million reshelling these places.
yeah.
If you had taken your pocketbook, neither one of you would drudge a place.
I do it.
Yeah.
Your own ground.
Private ground, yeah.
But you put it on quality rock, you wouldn't take $2.3 million to reshell these places.
I think last year, excuse me, but I think last year Rappahannock produced a lot of oysters off Rappahannock. And that's from dredging over many, many, many years. So it's increased the ground, and I don't wanna argue with sir, I apologize.
You don't wanna argue with me, cause I'm against you.
I know, but that's fine, you have the right.
Well, I can maybe,
That song has been proven, it works.
well, I can maybe try to,
Why mess up a good thing?
well, I can,
Don't wanna hear me no more. That's
I
fine.
can maybe show some actual science on these areas, post-harvest surveys, and VIMS right now is working on an economic analysis of our replenishment efforts in what we're discussing right now. And in the hand scrape areas, we've had to put 2 bushels of shell back for every bushel of shell, every harvested bushel from those areas during the current rotation cycle. So if it does take shell to harvest, to replenish those areas after they've been opened to scrape. So that's true. You can, there are some debates about marketable oysters, and I understand that from a marketing perspective. It does break up areas. You create higher numbers or a higher percentage of marketable oysters in a dredge area. So there's not more marketable oysters, but more of the oysters are there are marketable. So we went over this last go around. I think I've talked to VIMS going forward, and to answer some of these questions about meat quality, I think we're looking at potentially sampling these areas and doing a meat quality comparison multiple times. We typically do it once over the season, and staff tries to, I understand there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of history with the hand scrape and the patent tong. These discussions today where people are passionate about, I think this is nothing, my understanding, I wasn't here at the time, compared to what it was 20 years ago when these discussions were being had there. I understand where Mr. Smith is coming from, and I understand where you all are coming from. But I guess to show you the data about what we're talking about, which is I think what staff will be basing their decision on, I'd be glad to do that if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
First, Lee,
You said 2 bushels of shell for every bushel of market oysters?
That's roughly what we've put into the Rappahannock, into these, maintain these hand scrape areas over the last 6 years. With the exception of area 1, hasn't, since it's gone to patent tong, we haven't had to do any replenishment there, and the resource has, well, you can see right here, it is what it is, yeah.
I know typically on a good average, low-end average, on private shore, we're getting a bushel and a half to 1 bushel on a low end.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just as much pressure, you put 4 or 5 boats dredging an area and going over Grapevine or wherever.
Well, the resources also increased about tenfold in that same time period as well. So it's not a one-to-one return, but that's to get to the resource to the highest level it's been in 30 years, I guess. So that's to get to where we are, not just harvest everything, plant everything, harvest everything. So our returns could be much higher than that if we harvest everything that was there. Yeah.
okay, Barbara?
I have a question, educate me. Area 4 has 2 weeks of hand scrape and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Area 4 has,
2
1,
weeks of hand scrape, nothing else.
has 2 weeks, right?
Right, so,
Yeah.
That was open all last year.
so I don't
That's
understand
the
that.
area that was open last year.
Area that was
So,
open
do
last
we-
year and closed early.
I mean, we're talking about, I thought maybe something similar here. Do we look at that after that's done?
Yes, different area, yeah.
Do we do a post-harvest survey there?
Well, no, there's no harm, it's only 2 weeks of hand scrape. And do you look at it in November to see what, or December or January? I mean, I don't understand. I'm just trying to be educated. I don't wanna take a lot of time. See me after class.
And some of these,
You're talking about doing 2 weeks of hand scrape and wondering what the impact will be in sort of a controversial way. And here's an area that's getting 2 weeks of hand scrape.
we
Why can't we look at that?
Everybody's fine with it because it's already a hand scrape area. The
Oh,
argument is just because.
Oh, okay. It's just, it was in the rotation last time, it's all hand scrape.
Right, looking to do something different in a different area.
I guess what it, you know, I'll just sort of give a quick breakdown for discussion purposes is typically scrapes and dredges, if the market density is 5 markets per square meter, so 5 oysters here, or lower, you can still make catch a limit in those areas. For patent tongs, that's sort of the threshold, 5 markets per square meter, and you can usually get your limit there. You're working probably most of the day. Once you get above 10 markets per square meter, that's better bottom shaft tongers can make it work there. and patent tongers are catching a limit in a couple hours. Right now, most of the areas in the Rappahannock are, you can see this is area 1 after harvest, we're at 25 markets per square meter, so very high, very good bottom.
I think I got my answer up here, was that area 4 has always been all hand scrape, no patent tong. So to do it for 2 weeks is just nothing different.
Right.
A month and a half last year.
Okay, I got it.
And I guess this is not an apples to apples comparison, but I think the concern is, this is area 2 after harvest, and it was longer than 2 weeks. Again, more boats, so likely area 1 would not be depleted to a level where you probably couldn't patent tong behind it. I'm not saying it would be good or bad for the area, but there is significantly more impact in a typical harvest rotation cycle compared to patent tongs in general. So you see, if you take the same number of bushels of oysters from a patent tong area over a 3-year time period, and you take the same number of oysters from a hand scrape area over the same year time period, you have to put shell back in the hand scrape area, and we haven't had to do that in the patent tong area. So I guess
You're saying that's the same number of bushels harvested?
I'll put you a slide up that you asked for there, Tommy. So here's it broken down by year in the harvest areas in the Rappahannock. So this is area 1, so all of this harvest, 10, 15, more than close to 60,000 bushels would be a normal rotation cycle. So 3 years is a normal rotation cycle. It has been open longer, that's correct. But if you add that up, that would be that same time period. So typically we have 2 months for hand scrape area, it's closed for the rest of the time.
I was asking for comparing a season to a season, the number of bushels.
This is one season.
How long was Rappahannock area 2 and 4 open?
3.5 months on area.
3.5 months on area 2, yeah.
4 months on area 1, or 3.5.
So I guess just to go back in time, when area 1 wasn't a patent tong area, last time it was opened up to hand scrape, the better producing seasons for a single area in the Rappahannock are in that 30 to 30,000 bushel range regardless. So area 4 and area 1, in a good year, in that typical 2-month season, are in that 30 to 40,000 range. That's what we've seen when they have a lot of boats working for 2 months. After they've been opened for that 2 months, the brown shell volume is usually at or below our replenishment target. So that's what you see when we come back and resurvey these areas. That's area 1 after that harvest. This was area 2. This area required, based on what we've been doing for the last 20 years, we planted shell there this year because the shell volume dropped below 10, close to that 5-liter threshold. Area 7 and 8 that had a shorter season, you know, we dropped below 10 liters. There's lower density there, but that shorter season didn't get us, you know, below that threshold, and actually the spat set and the smalls were so high, we actually gained a little bit there. So those short scrape seasons are okay in some cases, but they do usually require replenishment effort to build them up if there is heavy effort there. But you just don't get that area. People quit before it usually gets down to a level where it needs replenishment, less efficient gear types.
But on the replenishment side, you don't have to replenish as much as you would like if it was a 2-month opening, right?
Right, yeah.
You know, my request in our Ben's meeting discussion on the Rappahannock, that's where I was going with that. Does it make more sense to have more frequent, shorter seasons?
Yeah, I think so.
Similar to what Rich or Ben or any private leaseholder would do. You rotate quicker, Lee does it, you know, and move on, so it.
I'm in favor of it too. I think it works, but.
Mr. Chairman, I think 3 years, you lose a half a year's harvest. And what do you know, death rate, I'm all for that.
Okay, I guess we beat this horse enough here, right? What do y'all wanna do? I mean, in fairness to Ben, this committee can make a motion, pass it, we can pass it on to the commission, well, staff likes it or doesn't, and, you know, and see what the commission does. Y'all's vote.
Are you talking for just that area, for this whole plan?
Just that area, the 2 weeks, the hand scrape 2 weeks in area 1 that we've been talking about.
And I apologize, I got so lost in the discussion, I didn't even remember what we were discussing.
I mean, it's, you know, whatever the committee wants to do. I mean, I'm not gonna vote, so, but I'm not in favor of it.
It makes sense as a compromise and just to get some data, to have a 5 working day.
Not necessarily, I'm saying we have to do it this year, but I'm just thinking for the future of the rock, we might want to think about it.
Well, we can pick an area in the Rappahannock right now, so we could look at area 6, and we might be able to, you know, we can take another area that isn't Patton Bottom, and we could potentially look at doing a mid-harvest survey, so we can do that. Again, there's only so many service days.
Area 6 and 1 were put in conjunction, and Dr. Mann can speak to this, but it was 1 and 6 were put together because 1 was the most productive rock in the river, and area 6 was one of the least, and that was the reason 1 and 6 were put together. 2 and 3 were somewhat comparable, and 4 and 5 were, you know, 4's always been the best of those areas, but that was the reason it was placed like it was.
It was a hand scrape too.
Correct, and I'm about done debating area 1, but we are talking about an area that's always been very productive. You would expect it to come back quicker and react different than an area 6, for instance, but,
Would y'all be in favor of maybe tabling it for this year and looking at some closer numbers? A little more accurate than what we have here, and look at over a 3-year period, you know, Patton Tunnel.
Look at it in January, when you look at it.
great idea.
Too late.
And on your 2-week question on area 4, correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy, and area 1 are probably the most comparable in terms of productivity. So we could look at, we'll have a before survey of area 4, and we can have an after survey. So we'll see that change. Again, area 4 is still in pretty decent shape.
Will that happen before the January meeting, those 2 surveys?
We could try to do that. I can't promise on staff time and boat time, but we might have that data available before the February commission meeting, certainly.
The other piece of data that I'd like to see out of area 1 is just how the oysters look out there, because I don't wanna go back down this road again. It's pretty well hashed out, but there is an element of unmarketability to the point we're getting at.
Well, I think in all fairness, and, you know, like I say, I do Patton Tunnel a lot, and I grudge a lot, but it's some areas where it is a lot of snaps, you know, and there's a lot of areas where it's not any snaps, so it's not everywhere, you know. I mean, you get bunches and you do it at Deep Rock as well as area 1, you know, and the guys think they can get 16 bushels quicker in the snaps and they can be able to sell them, they're gonna work there, you know, so, and I mean, that's definitely because it's too many horses there, you know.
Would it be prudent before we move on to see if it's anyone else in the audience that, any other watermen?
Corey, what do you think?
Yeah,
Come on.
I did not work area 1 this past year. You know, in my opinion, I'm not trying to start another battle here. We all pay a oyster user fee to be able to do all gears, but Patton Tongers are the minority. Area 1 is a great rock, always has been. I dredged it for a couple of years, and Patton Tong did, I think, the first, what's it been, 4 years now?
It was last
This
opening.
before.
Was this this coming is the 4th?
Yeah.
Well, the first 2, and I drudged it for 3 rotations before that. And there are places that I believe personally that there are snappier, less marketable oysters than where it used to be. I go back to numbers and say, hey, this used to be good, pretty oysters, and we worked here last year, and it's not the same anymore. It's still some there, but you see, it does not look to me that it's as marketable as what it was. And I personally would be in favor of seeing it drudged for 2 weeks or even a month, but I wouldn't want it as a standalone rock. I don't think say you got 20 boats down there patting honging all the time, if they switch over as big as Area 1 is, I don't know that that does anything. I do think you need more than that, but I don't want to see it, you know, I mean, it used to be 60 to 100 boats there catching 24 bushels for a solid month. I mean, it produces it. 2 weeks sometime I don't think would hurt anything. I think would help it.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Mr. Chairman, I want to apologize for bringing this attention up.
That's okay.
But, are we talking about maybe reevaluating this in January?
Yeah, I think.
Will that give us enough time to do, well, we don't have to do it this year, but we'll know the studies and, am I right?
Yeah, I guess definitely more information is always better for staff to make a recommendation. The committee, as Ben said, can make a recommendation. Contrary to that, the staff is gonna make their recommendation as we're obligated to do based on the best available science. So that would give us more available science, if we wait a little longer. And, again, the other aspect is that, you know, we're looking at long-term sustainability here as well, so.
So am I, and I'm all in favor if you want to review it in January.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're scheduled to finish up in January anyway, so, you know, we can look at it if we.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
And this don't pertain to me a whole lot, but I'm just wondering why, when you give out the data, you give out the 3 years on the patent on compared to the 1 year that it's open. And I understand it on the replenishment side. You know, I if I'm not mistaken, Andrew, you're saying, you know, they've worked this for 3 years and this was only worked 1, but we have to replenish it. But I never hear about what's made the other 3 years that the rocks is open. You know, it's always the 3 years of what you're not having to spend. I don't understand why, like last year, Area 4 was open. It sounds like, I think I'm getting this right. If I'm not, we'll just pretend it is. Last year, 4 was open. 6 might about the sounds like this year, and maybe next year it's 2. We don't hear what's made off of 2, 4, and 6. All we ever hear is what is not spent on 2, 4, and 6 in those 3 years. It's almost like the numbers wants to get played on what we're not spending, but what's not being made, and you know what's not being made. And maybe, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding that, but I just, sometimes we might need to look at, I'd like to hear the number of what the dockside value is instead of what the shell plant value is.
Well, we definitely, Dan, to your point there, we wouldn't probably still be getting general funds for replenishment if it wasn't a good return in investment, so it is, and that's in large part because of the way we manage the fishery with the scrape and the efficiency. So roughly we spend $2.5 million a year on shell planting. Most of that, if not all of that, goes to scrape and dredge areas, and they produce, you know, 75% of the oysters. The other 25% roughly comes from other harvest gears, and those areas rarely require much in the way of replenishment. So that's
well,
all.
And I'm being very honest, Andrew. This is the first I've heard this. All I've heard is we ain't had to replenish Area 1, Deep Rock. I've not heard a word of what is made on these rocks. And that's what that. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I think that's the end goal for me. What I can make, I think that's the end goal for Richard and Tommy and for Peyton, who's, you know, the processors. I think it just seems like the numbers is being a little biased in what we're not spending instead of what we're making.
Well, Andrew, you got the numbers, what was called in Deep Rock last year, right?
I can pull those up. I don't have it for Deep Rock, but Deep Rock hasn't had any recent replenishment effort, but,
How much has been made off Deep Rock?
I haven't pulled those numbers right here recently, so I don't have that data actively available here. It depends probably on the year, but you can average it if you're doing, in March, 20, 30 boats out there catching a limit for 20 days, so.
Not Deep Rock, yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not sitting here trying to take it, but it just seems like this is a one-sided coin that, and I'm just sitting here on the phone listening. This don't affect me one bit other than the tax dollars getting spent. But it just seems like it's a one-sided coin that's getting flipped.
Okay, all right, thank you, Dan. Tom?
I appreciate Dan's comments, and I think he brings up a good point, and, I get passionate about this. We all do. But this money, this $2.5 million was lobbied and requested, and the legislators bought into this industry and the harvest and the dollars we produce. So, you know, at the end of the day, the money was appropriated, has been appropriated for replenishment to return dollars to the economy.
Right.
And I think Dan's comments kind of highlight that for me. I appreciate that, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Is there any sort of cost of replenishment to value to the economy, dockside value analysis per rock? Not overall fishery, for the state, but per rock.
I think our VMRC has funded a study to do just that. So some of the funds are going to our colleagues at VIMS to do an analysis, at least in the Rappahannock, on a rock-by-rock analysis to look at the best return on investment. But overall, I guess, the number that's often kicked around, which was based, I think, on 14-15 season, when we had $2 million in replenishment, and we had roughly $14 million in dockside value of harvest, was that 7-to-1 ratio. It kind of fluctuates a little bit based on that, and that just is pure harvest, but sort of in that range is the direct return in dockside value on those replenishment dollars.
The rock by rock analysis will determine that, but gear type as well, I would like to see, yeah.
Right.
I thought you said too, Andrew, that 75% of the harvest comes off of replenished. Did I hear that?
Correct,
Hand
that's
scrape.
25%.
And I guess in the Rappahannock, roughly 75% of that harvest, we're talking just the Rappahannock for clarity, is hand scrape, and 25% has been coming from Pat Tong since, you know, we've had those 3 years of it open there. And again, there's been no replenishment dollars spent for that. So for Dan's point, Area 2 had, 100,000 more, or not quite 100,000 bushels of shell, but the Rappahannock in total had close to more than 100,000 bushels of shell we planted there this year, all in scrape areas, to support the roughly, half, more than that, I think. I hate doing math on the fly, but it's close to that 2-to-1 ratio shell planting is what went into the Rappahannock based on those scrape areas that were harvested. But there was almost 100,000 bushels caught in the Rappahannock this year.
And that also, you have to add in the number of what you left there too. What's the inventory that's still there that was not harvested, which
Right.
normally isn't a factor, but we're thankfully, give good Lord credit for, we're leaving these areas catching limits early, which tells me that we're doing a lot better than we were when we're leaving more there. But Andrew, do you recall the year that we terminated the 24 bushel limit?
I want to say it was 18-19, that season there, and that was, you can see that probably in our transfer numbers.
2018 or 2019, not 18-19.
Yes.
It did help, so I just was wondering roundabout. I personally think that's the strongest conservation measurement that we've made in my time on the meeting.
And it is one of those things that from a management perspective, we look for in closing these areas and look to the committee and the buyers to inform us and our law enforcement is when these areas, when they start catching later limits, regardless of the gear type, those are usually signs that either the season was too long or it's time to close or we did something wrong there. So it's good the way things have been working now with the effort split up between areas and gears. We did harvest 100,000 more bushels this past season than we did the season before, so, and the resource continues to go up. So those are all good things. So again, just what staff will be saying to the commission is urge incremental steps. I'm not sure that it would be prudent of us to increase our harvest by 50% every single year, but looking at both growing a market for Virginia oysters and growing a sustainable harvest to meet that market, I think is the overall goal.
And the other factor, I think Dan brought this up in our last meeting, I mean, it was a perfect season weather-wise. I don't think we missed a day of buying something on an open day, other than Thanksgiving and Christmas. And in March, you know, Deep Rock extension, we lost more days in March on the Deep Rock extension than we did the entire season. So we were very fortunate.
Yeah, we were.
I look back at one day, Tommy. One day.
Okay.
What are we up to?
So I guess we'll table this and review in January. Everybody agreed? Okay. All right, let's move on to Losses Bay. We've got a schedule for Pat and Tom for the month of December and the month of January. Kind of curious, Andrew, what was your thoughts on you know, doubling it up with Area 1 as opposed to, I know a lot of people I've talked to would like to see maybe it moved over to February maybe instead of December. Is that, you know, January, February instead of December and January? I mean.
I guess always, I know it looks like on paper when you look at it area by area and you kind of tug one in one way and one the other that it's the same effort, but it's not, because it allows boats to go to one area, work that area, and then go to another area and work that area, as opposed to split the effort between two areas. So that's all it is to give folks an option if the weather's bad and coming out of the northeast hard, then that area, is my understanding, would be a better area to work on than, say, Broad Creek.
Consideration the waterman's got is weather. I mean, that's the real benefit to this area in Losses Bay is the northwest and northeast wind in January, February. I mean, it's an ideal place to work in those conditions, you know, and that was the waterman I've talked to. That's their main objective, I think so. And whatever y'all think, so for discussion, Tommy.
We still have Deep Rock as an open area for Pat and Tongan, so it wouldn't be standalone.
No. That's right.
I think that lower end fleet would maybe something that Mr. Smith and I could agree on. I think probably that Pat and Tongan fleet and Deep Rock would work there, or the lower part of the bay guys, and then so it wouldn't be standalone.
And again, this is an area that hasn't been worked, so it hasn't had any what has been termed cultivation, I guess, in 20 years. So the resource condition there is hadn't been dredged on, it hadn't been patent tongued on. Seems to be the thinking that there's lots of marketable oysters there, even though it has been left for 20 years. So I guess we'll see, but how many boats are actually working there. But if the resource isn't there, I'm not sure it would matter, but we can kind of see and readdress that. And again, we're planning on surveying that and have data on it by December time period.
I take Andrew's point to heart. Area 1, when we opened it the first time after it had been closed for 20 plus years, we expected a windfall, and it was a couple rotations before it really started producing. So I think he makes a good point. We're assuming it's a lot of.
Right. And my thoughts was, I mean, Area 1, I mean, you would be extending 1 month is what you would do, you know. I mean, I think, you know, market situation-wise, weather-wise and all. I mean, it's a lot of pluses to moving it, 1 month. It'd still be the same. I mean, still have both areas open in January, it would just be a month of February.
Mhm.
I would support your recommendation on that, or I would support opening it in January and having a discussion in January for the second half, whichever staff would recommend, but I wouldn't want probably to suggest it being open 3 months.
Right.
I wouldn't be in favor of that, so
Right.
I would rather take it off the table in December and then, have January on and we can talk and give staff more time to evaluate.
All right.
Just my opinion, I'd be open to suggestions from other committee members.
Any other thoughts, Lee?
I would agree with what Tommy said, take it off December, take it off the plate here, and then look at it when we meet in January. You'll have an idea then what's there,
Maybe extend it
what
to
we've done on
February.
it, the effort on it, and make a decision whether to move it, into January, or to February, or there's just nothing there, can't sustain it.
Mhm.
Rich, you okay?
I agree, I think we'll know real quick in January.
Yeah. Okay. That's what we'll do, Andrew.
All right, so strike Larson's
December,
Bay
look
from
at it in
December.
January,
Okay.
keep January on there for right now. Okay, let's go to area 4, hand scrape, 2-week season, area 4. I guess that's kind of just a catch up from last year, the month and a half season that we had that last year, so, everybody okay with that?
I think it shows the prudence of making the decision that was made last year, and I think the January meeting will give us and staff time, who knows, we might need to come back with a suggestion to close something 2 weeks early this year, so.
Okay, area 6, November hand scrape and December hand scrape at, area 6. Small area, I think we're pretty sure we'll get a month there, but not sure about 2 months, but maybe some people will stay around and work. Tom?
My feeling would be, area 6 in November and then give it a break and let's look at it in February with the possibility that staff and the commission would have to make a decision to close it early. There's a lot of small oysters there or whatever, but I don't think we need 2 months on that.
Okay.
So you saying review it in January, Tom?
Yeah, I would like to see it put on February, as a February opening, and then, sort of address it like we did Area 4 last year, give Andrew and staff time to do their stock assessment and get a better idea. Anoxia bothers me badly in this area, we tend to see. So, let's, put it on for February, but readdress it at our January meeting.
Well, we try to make every effort to get out and do mid-harvest surveys, pre-harvest surveys, and post-harvest surveys, but we do survey 10,000 acres, and we have already added a couple other days here, so we can make every effort to try to get out there and take a look at it there, but again.
We'll have a lot of input from the harvest too. We'll have, boats aren't catching limits at the end of.
Okay, so we'll go there in November, work November, and look at it in January, for possible February, after we, take a look at it.
Mr. Chairman, do we have anything else to supplement Area 6 in November? I don't know that maybe Tommy and Richie can help me out here. That will hold the market for November, that's a busy time for the market. I don't know.
You was recommending leaving it open in November and closed in December, weren't you, Tommy?
Yeah.
Yeah, close in December.
Open November,
But
closed in December.
We talked about
in addition.
Maybe additional area.
Oh, for November.
for November.
When was the last time that Area 5 was open? Year before last? This would be 3 years, this would be the third closed season on that, or the second closed season on that.
It would be out of rotation again, yeah. Yeah, so it would be a 2-year rotation on Area 5. And I guess, again, we talked about 2-year rotations, but we don't really have data on that, and every time we're taking, it gives you less in the bank every time you're taking more oysters, yeah.
What's your feel for 6 in the anoxia from last year, and sort of what were you seeing there?
There was definitely some mortality on the deeper side, sort of up above 16, 17 feet seemed to be where it was. It did have a very high recruitment there, and we did, add a little bit of seed there, since it's been opened as well. So we tried to give it a boost back up, but again, it's in probably in better shape than the last time it was open, but again, it's a smaller area, so it doesn't produce the same numbers.
Do you have numbers what was caught on it last time?
Yes.
If I'm correct, I didn't mark it, but I think it lasted about a month.
This covers calendar year here, so it was close to 12,000 bushels came off Area 6 there in that 2021 season.
Not bad.
Some food for thought, and I was a big proponent of the Currituck hand tong area, but based on the situation we're in with the rotation, is there any merit to a 1 or 2 week straight season in there somewhere?
Again, this is an area that was a closed harvest area that we incrementally opened up to hand tong. It had been scrape in the past, and it went back and forth. I think it's something that, again, if doesn't need much replenishment, but there's not a lot of effort there, so.
Would it support, would middle ground support a 2 week season?
I guess that would be more on where the buyers and the fleet, they think they're gonna be. Yes, if it was 12 boats, no, if it was 60. So I guess when we talk about what it support, you all might know better than I do, since I don't have control of where the fleet goes as much.
You have the stock you have a stock assessment on 6, which y'all did?
Yeah. Or we have the harvest that came off there, but I can pull up the stock assessment numbers here. I need to get my reading glasses out here. There we go. So again, you can see the average number. You able to see that there all right? Try to make it a little bit bigger. But this is the fall stock assessment. And you can see that there was some of that mortality here, but this was the last time it was open, so we had less than 5 markets, and right now we're in that 3 to 4 range, 3 to 4 to 5. We were closer to 7 or 8 before some of that mortality, but we have had a lot of these smalls. They are likely reaching market size, so they have it a year to grow. And we did have the highest spats that we've seen there since this area was added to the program. Those aren't going to be market size obviously yet, but a lot of those smalls are likely market size. So that's sort of where we are. Try to zoom in a little bit more on that. So this is 10 right there, so a little under 5 markets per square meter there. Probably going to be closer to 6 or 7, which is a pretty decent area for a scrape area, but again, a smaller area. And this is what we were looking at prior to it opening the last rotation cycle in 2019 there.
Without too much trouble, do you have Currituck and stock assessment, please? If not, it's fine.
It'd take me a little bit longer to pull up. I'd be glad to send it out there, but most of these areas in the Rappahannock are at least in that 7 or 8 range or higher. Yeah. So since it's been open to hand tone.
We looked at that possibility of 2 weeks in Currituck, would we have the ability after 1 week, if you know, the data coming back to you from law enforcement, from industry, is 100 boats in there, that we could do what we did in Area 4 and close it immediately with, could the commissioner just make a call to close it immediately?
Not under current regulation per se, unless we sort of established a harvest quota for that area. And
Can you do it under didn't the commissioner have the authority under emergency action to close any area at any time?
They could put out a notice. The way it's written in regulation is any area could be closed if we determine that the stock has been depleted by 50% or more. So, I think if that we can, usually we put out a notice like that. So in regulation, it spells out how to do it. In code, it's a little more vague, I guess I would say.
I would be interested in exploring it to help with Area 6, because we know it's gonna get a lot of pressure for a small area. But I would like to know that, you know, if one of the boats calls you and says, look, I don't think that would happen, but if there's 60 boats here that we could just cut it off, and the understanding when the season opens that we're gonna monitor that, and if this thing gets out of hand, it's gonna be shut down. Not unlike what we did with Area 4, but I guess I would wanna be sure that we could do that.
Right.
I'm open to other committee members on this idea of something to help Area 6.
It sounds like we're trying to find an answer for, in case Area 6 is weak right before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about, Antong area and Caratone.
Or the Hantong area, yeah.
Do you think that'd be a good time to maybe do a 2-week Patentong, dredge in the Patentong area like we talked about? Don't shoot me for bringing it up.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I guess, you know, on Tommy's point about 2-week seasons, just not a staff recommendation or anything, just something for the committee to discuss is, I know the typical, holiday rush covers the last 2 weeks in November and the last 2 weeks in December. Is that fairly accurate? I know you're catching product the whole time, but, you know, we've done 2-week seasons. You could split up Area 7 or 8.
2 weeks ahead.
2 weeks ahead, right, okay.
So the middle 2 weeks in November?
First 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know what the thoughts would be on having, Area 7 split up 2 weeks, first 2 weeks in November and first 2 weeks in December.
I personally think that would be a nightmare for law enforcement. I think, you know, and the commercial fishermen, I think that would create a lot of misunderstanding and.
And it leaves nothing open in the Rappahannock.
In December.
In the last 2 weeks of December.
All right. Yeah.
We're basing it, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we're basing this on just the history of Area 6 not being a very productive ground over the years, and being a small area, like correct, AC?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're probably better off keeping 7 a whole month in December. One of the big problems is finding places to tie up, you know, when you get up in 7 and 8, it's really difficult on the Middlesex side, finding somewhere to, be able to access these areas, you know. And you guys being able to pick up the oysters, you know, you can't be with so many places at one time. You know, that's a problem, yeah.
That was, and again, on the Caratoman thing for 2 weeks, that was sort of what I had in mind, that it's close to 6 to a degree that the boats would, you know, the fleet would be split up, but it would be in the same general vicinity as far as buyers that.
Andrew, could you pull up that Hantong area in the Caratoma? Do you have a chart on that?
Let me see if I can find it here. Everyone makes fun of me for having 70 slides prepared, but you never know.
Mr. Chairman, while he's looking, can we go on to the next one?
Let's see, we're gonna just go, while you're looking at it, we're gonna continue on here. Of course, we'll keep 7, December, right? And, area 8 will be January, and trade.
I like the idea of both of those.
Okay. Tommy, I know you're okay with 7 and 8, right? Tommy, I mean, I'm sure you're okay with 7 and 8, leaving them December, January.
Yes, and that, I applaud staff on that. I think it's a little short season, 1 month season there,
Yeah.
working well, so I completely agree.
Okay.
I got something I'd like to bring up on the table. Something we were discussing is Area 6 struggling as a standalone area in the Rappahannock. But something we discussed 30 minutes ago was opening York River Area 1 for dredging. So my question to the panel here is, what do you think about opening up York River 1 for scraping in November? Which I understand it would be cutting into a hand-tong area, but it might be better for the market, and it would help more people if we had a scrape area in York River in conjunction with Area 6 options. That's something I'd like to suggest.
So you think instead of February, open it in November?
That's a suggestion, don't shoot us. Wouldn't,
Okay, Tom.
you think it'd be all right, Jamie? That wouldn't hurt you?
Okay.
Mr. Green,
Yeah, it might shake things up a little bit, break it up so you can come back with shaft tongs and be broken up a little bit. Would that alleviate the market issues?
I mean, it would certainly help, I would think.
I think it would certainly help.
And still hand tone October? That's what we have down the list, am I correct? Yeah.
Right.
Finish to that, on the hand tone area.
So basically, Rich, the reason we would be doing it is to have 2 areas open with Area 6 and York River 1.
I think it's a great idea, Jason, I really do. I was just saying, still hand tone.
Oh, correct,
Yeah.
correct.
October.
Well, I mean, I'd make a motion to do that if anybody thinks it's a good idea.
And we still keep February? Just swap February to November.
I'm open for discussion on that.
Does Mr. Green have anything to say on it?
Jamie, do you have anything to say on that?
I would just leave February.
Leave it for shaft tonging?
Just move it from February to November, so.
Okay, so it would revert back to the shaft tonging for February?
You're gonna make my chart a lot more complicated.
I hope you're writing all this stuff down.
I'm trying to capture it, yep.
Okay. There we go.
February, York River. And just, so, back to the Coratoman middle ground, so this is the, scrape areas there, and, this is the, hand-tong middle ground area there. And you can see this area has, minimal replenishment. We moved a lot of seed out of there. Last time it got a really strong set, we moved. You remember, Tommy, what came out there?
I don't wanna quote the number, but it was a good amount. And just prior to that, we had a private harvest in there, I guess, 2 years before that, where private industry took seed and replaced 2 bushel shells. No, you're right, it was significant.
Okay.
See, what, 7 and 8, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it stayed in the Rappahannock, I'm not exactly sure which, but.
So that's where we're at now, so we're right at sort of that hand-tong bottom, good scrape bottom if we're open, so 9 markets, 10 markets per square meter, 10 shell, doesn't really need much, it's had a pretty good spat set,
What's
last
the
several years.
acreage on that? Do you know how big is
It's 15 acres,
it?
10, 15 in that range.
It's a solid 15, it's not like,
Bar?
yeah, it's a good solid area. I guess one thing I'm sensitive to, just like the York River, about what we're taking away from hand-tongers and getting their thoughts. But I don't think this is seeing very much effort at all. To my knowledge, it was maybe 3 or 4. And most of them worked the Currituman side next to, Myers Creek, Yankee Point side, just because of the depth of water. So,
Okay.
I would be interested, like I say, in exploring that possibility, particularly with York River being suggested that we have those 3 and, no more than 2 weeks for Currituman and the ability for the commissioner to close it if need be, but, it is a
All right.
underutilized resource, unless there are plans to move it for seed, which it looks like, according to Andrew's numbers, there are a few markets. I mean, it looks pretty good, so.
I'll make sure I just captured that. So the 3 areas we're talking about, I got the first one, which was York River Area 1, moving February to November for a month. Currituman, look at 2 weeks, and then we're talking about the area, having that concurrent with Area 6 for those 3 areas. Okay.
The first 2 weeks.
That's the first 2 weeks.
I guess the asterisks in the reverse direction. With your Excel skills.
Yeah.
Okay, do we need a vote, anything on that, or just, we just go and vote at the end? Okay.
I'll try at the end to try to put this into Excel, or maybe Jamie's on it, maybe. We can try to, see if we got that right, because I'll make sure I can read my notes. Okay, we'll pull up.
Ask if Corey had any comments on that.
Yeah, Corey, okay?
I like that.
Okay. Okay, all right, let's move on. Let's see, next would be Great White Comico.
Your turn, Rich.
Yep, I'll stay on this, Mr. Chairman. Talking with the guys at home, they want to go back what traditionally has been December and January for Area 1, Great Wacomico. In February, Hand Scrape and Blackberry. I would like Mr. Rice to comment on this, because he works a lot of this area. What were your thoughts on this?
No, I agree with exactly what you said. I mean, we thought pretty much the exact same thing, just flip-flop last year. What you're doing is, in our area, you're cutting us from 3 months of harvest to 2 months of harvest, and we all know what blackberry is. You're giving us, we have 2 good months for December and January, and then you take what you get in February if you're willing to stay home and work blackberry.
And could you say that again?
Area 1, Great Wacomico, open in December and January, Hand Scrape.
In addition to,
And Blackberry in February.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? All right, got it, Andrew?
I think so.
Okay. Let's see, it's going down, Tangier, Dane, Pocomoke, Beasley in California. Like I said, I'm never worked over there, so I don't know anything about this area. Don, I mean, and it changes.
What were your thoughts on California, 2 weeks in November?
Again, it's out of rotation. It's 2 weeks. Had a lot of effort. It did get an extension of 2 weeks last year. Had needed a replenishment effort. So,
How did it work with Andrew?
it had, Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, the weather wasn't great, but the days that they did work, there were maybe 16 or 17 boats there versus 6 or 7, in a total Tangier Sound. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it wasn't heavily, and Cali only got worked, like the last part of the extension. That didn't even get worked the full part. And the last time Cali, I don't know how much replenishment's going to have to go on Cali for 2 weeks, because the last time it was open was COVID, and there was the market was the market didn't open up really, you know, any amount till like around February sometime. It seemed like it got a little better when the weather got real nasty, and that's when everybody went to Thurfer. So Kiali ain't really got worked hard, and over over 2 rotations, 3 rotations back is when he got worked, got worked a little bit. So I don't know how much replenishment would have to go there for 2 weeks.
And
Do you have a season for last year, for these areas?
yes,
They opened in the middle of November last year.
no, December 1st. And I guess it's,
Kiali, just to give Peyton I think that was Peyton. Kiali was in last year's rotation, and where he got worked so little to try to counteract Area 9, so that all the boats here wouldn't go over there, all the boats over there wouldn't come over here, just to try to, like staff tries to do, to try to even things out. We just asked for a week, for Kiali instead of anything that's going to be open on this year's rotation, because it's not been worked hardly at all.
well, I guess at this point, I'd have to think about all the different changes that have been proposed and kind of look at them in totality, because I know a lot of folks are focusing on area by area. So I'd be glad to carry any SMAC recommendation forward, and then if there is a different staff recommendation to do it, I'm always, every time we do what we're talking about there, sort of shifting those, it's a concern that you're spreading out effort, but you're also stretching the length of the season, and, that's how we get into, that's how you end up with 100,000 more bushels of harvest, is by doing that stretch, is what we did last year, so.
Well, it's like I've told you before, trouble on the shore, December 1st is not cutting it. From the end of September grabbing, you got nothing to do until December. And like I told you we would like to get Shell Rock in the future open up November 1st. November, December, January, let Tangier open up December 1st, just like he did last year, December. Tangier never got worked. Shell Rock got clobbered.
Well, maybe something.
60-some boats, and I think there's 17 boats on Tangier.
Well, maybe something to consider is, I guess, we've almost, unless there's been an extension one way or another, and usually the extension goes towards Tangier, not Pocomoke, because Pocomoke has more effort, is having those areas overlapping. So I know we talked about Beasley Bay in California, but maybe keeping those 2 areas open together.
I'd like to see
Forever, or just this time?
Just this go around, yeah.
Oh, all right.
I'd like to see Beasley's opened up in March. 2 weeks in March. There's not a whole lot of oysters there, but it just needs to be worked. There may be some potential there in the future, but, that would, I don't see where opening up Beasley's 2 weeks in March is gonna hurt anything. Nobody ever works it. Because it was in the same rotation as Shell Rock. You're not gonna go to Beasley's Bay when you get your limit at Shell Rock at 8 o'clock, go to Beasley's Bay and search for hours.
Yeah, no, I think, sort of the trend is every area wants 2 weeks on one end and 2 weeks on the other, and that's a month longer season. So I understand that that's a whole month of income too. So it's, I wanna look at the totality there, yeah.
Like I said, September to December is a long time to go there making money. And with all the oysters Shell Rock had, and the oysters that are in Tangier, I don't see where it would hurt to open up Shell Rock November through January, and then Tangier from December till February.
I guess Shell Rock was.
How do you think, what do you think, Dan? Do we have enough oysters there for that?
Yeah, we've got enough oysters, right now, and I get what you're saying, and me and Don has had this discussion. The difference, we work the same times, but our communities is different. Most of us hauler crab, whereas Don's mostly don't hauler crab. I'm not ready to commit to opening Shell Rock in November, which that would be on next year's rotation. I'm not ready to jump on that. As I said, we both represent our communities, because most of us will be crabbing in November. It's very, I think last year when that place opened up in November, I think by the last day, I think it was 7. I think 7 of us, for the most part, it was like 3 or 4. And then, when people took their pots up, they got like the last 2 or 3 days in. So I'm not ready to jump on to November with Shell Rock thing. But as far as the opening up in what Don proposed on the middle of November, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it on the back end. But if the front end is what suits everything better, that's fine. It don't really matter who crabs will crab and who won't. If middle November works better, that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and kick and scream and, fight tooth and nail over it.
Well, let me just make sure I got that captured right for you, Dan and Don. You're talking California, end of November, 2 weeks, and Beasley Bay, 2 weeks beginning of March. So, okay. And again, I don't want to commit to anything in terms of a staff recommendation without looking at everything in totality first. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think that's what Don proposed. I think he proposed something else for November.
2 weeks. 2 weeks in Cali, the last 2 weeks of November, California.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he was talking about Shell Rock for potentially next year.
Next year. I understand Dan's point, but Dan's got 17 boats working in Tangier. We got 50 out of Sykes' area. They're not all from Sykes, but they're from the Eastern Shore. A lot of these guys want this open up in November. And years ago, it was people from Sykes that got this open. Randall Martin, Vernon Drewer, Jimmy Douglas. They're the ones that got this open up for dredging. I know Dan look, all over the whole state, it's everybody. Nobody owns anything. But the people of Sykes want a little bit more say in Pocomoke Sound, and I can understand why. I know you guys crab, Dan, we don't have that option. We have to sit around for a whole month or 2 months not making any money. And I understand where you're coming from, but you got to understand where I'm coming from.
Oh, I do.
I go hit with this every time, and I understand why they want this, and that's what I'd like to see done for another year. I'm not going to ask for it this year, but I guarantee you next year those seats will be filled. If not, you will not ever see me here again, because I'm tired of coming over here and trying to get something for us on the shore. Look, if you got to drive to James River and you got to spend nights in hotels, and you got to eat out on an 8-bushel limit, it's no money. And here's something else I'd like to bring up too. A 4-day work week with a 10-bushel limit until the end of December. How does anybody or everybody? Tommy, I know you're industry, how you feel about that?
Are you talking about 10 bushel per person or per boat?
10 bushel per person on a 4-day work week. We did that one year, if you remember. Yeah. And we changed it at January 1st. We went back to 5 days, 8 bushel because of weather.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody,
that has been talked about before.
I mean, that would help some of the boys from shore to want to come up here.
Yeah.
Spend 4 nights in a hotel versus 5.
Yeah. Anybody else's thoughts?
Are you talking about?
I wouldn't, I'd be okay with that. It's the same thing. It's the same amount of bushels. It's a day less oil. You would have to have I think we ran across this the last time, Don, and I think they done that. You would have to have every fishery set like that so that one couldn't jump from one to the other on the day off. Well, what I mean is like Rappahannock, if they went to hand dredging, was at 10 bushels for 4 days, but the Patton-Tongan was for 8 for 5. That was, you couldn't have that because all the dredgers would put their Patton-Tongs on for that Friday.
How you would police that? Yeah, that would really be difficult to police, I think, wouldn't it, Andrew?
Police is here, but I'm guessing that again, sort of switching boats back and forth, switching gears, it might get a little bit tricky there.
Just the year we did that, did you have any, was there that many problems with other people going on Fridays?
I think, didn't we do that statewide? I think that was a statewide measure, so it was across all gears is what we did, so that was the main thing. I think only hand tongs were open.
Hand tong in James River, because when we did that year, hand tong and James River stayed open 5 days, but, I'm not gonna go kicking and screaming. The only issue we had that year, Don, was we did get some complaints from customers on oyster dates, because what we shipped on Monday was from Thursday. So it was, 4 days old before we ever shipped it. It was 6 days old before it ever got where it was going type thing. But, we worked through it and, we worked on.
Well, to be honest with you, Tommy, I understand that, but there's one thing we can do to solve all this. That's open up Shell Rock in November. That gives the boys, it won't be over here.
Yeah.
That gives the boys an area to work and make money. And we've got the oysters there. We left tons of oysters there when we quit. Tangier never got touched, or I think it was 5 or 6 boats. Dean Dodge called me, it was only like 5 or 6 boats worked Tangier St. the whole time.
Was Shell Rock in rotation last year?
Yes, but it started December 1st. I mean, I'm talking Pocomo, Shell Rock, or was it 1 and 2? So it is, Andrew?
Right, yeah.
I mean, open it up in November. Give us a chance. This year, crabbing has been terrible on shore, and I don't know what they're gonna do until December.
It's really not a standalone area either, because if you're not oystering here in November, you're gonna be oystering James River or Rappahannock, York River.
I mean, it's catching oysters in different places, we spread out.
I'm a little bit confused, Dan, what's your opinion on that? I know we're talking about some of it for next year, but as far as this year, what are your opinions?
No, I mean, I'm not on board with that. As I said, I understand where Don's coming from, and we're usually joined at the hip. But I'm not on board with that because of, we do crab. I think, I'm gonna reference, I also feel like the way Don said, when he got talking about Randall and, 2 or 3 other ones, well, when I first started, there was nobody out of Sax's oystering. Don started about my 2nd year. It was not enough oysters to do it the whole winter. Don was the only boat that come out of there, and there was 25 or 30 of us. So I also feel like, even I know we're down to 17 boats, but I also feel like that we have a say in it. I don't, I get where he's coming from. I understand it. I do. I get what he's saying, that, they go from peeler into oystering and they don't want to go across the James River. And if I was them, I would feel the same way. But we're in like I said, most of us crab. Most of us do that. And it seems like it's always been a winter fishery here. I know years ago, way before my time, I think it opened up November 15th. But no, I can't get on board with that.
I think my understanding was that was more of a discussion for potentially next year to think about rather than this season. Okay. So we don't have to have any action on that tonight going forward for this year.
No, I'm not going there. I told you that on the phone. I wasn't going to go after it tonight, but next year, we'll have enough people here to see what we can do. I see Dan's point, but it's 50 boats versus 17.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
Okay. Well, thanks for bringing it up, Don. I know it situation, you know, I mean.
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go back to the Potomac tributaries on some questions that I was asked from some farmers up there. When it says Potomac tributaries, have all the areas been combined up there, or are there certain areas open certain years in Nominee, Cone, Ucalico?
We had, I guess, done a plant rotation there for 3 years, and starting last year, we have opened all those areas up concurrently and have just planted the cone this year.
I saw that.
So it didn't really change effort a whole lot one way or another. It seems like everything has been pretty consistent up there, lasts for about a month.
Not a amount of effort anyway, so.
Right.
Also, so everything there, each of those tributaries is open?
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, so it'll be the cone, the Nominee, and, the Ucalico, yeah.
All right. Second question that I was asked is, are there any future restoration efforts in Nominee? I know that Cone and Ucalico have kind of been flip-flopping back and forth.
Right.
I didn't know if there was any future plans.
We could always, go back to that. There had been some concerns about, the resource not holding up as well, and we opened it up early out of those. So we thought there would be more, and there wasn't. I know it's a good growing area, grows very rapidly, particularly in the mouth, as you know. So, I think we had some concerns with some of the last seed that's gone over there, and it not coming to the same, we didn't get the harvest that we expected off of it, so the committee declined to, keep that in the rotation and sort of double planted the other areas there.
Okay.
So definitely something to discuss going forward for the replenishment plan, yeah. I mean, as you know, it grows a phenomenal oyster, there's no spat set, so if you don't put something there, there's not gonna be anything there, but it does grow quick.
We had a Virginia Waterland Association meeting last night, and one of the members asked me about it. But thank you for clearing that up for me.
All right, well, I think that pretty much covers everything, don't it?
No one wants to get out of the boat on the seaside?
I still don't know what is going, I mean, are we going, I don't know what Don, what did you ask for November this year? I'm not, is it Beasley's, is it Nowin, is it Cali, or I don't know, I just don't know what's being asked.
Cali for 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of November.
Okay.
Bay, the first 2 weeks of March.
Beasley's Bay.
Yeah. I don't think
okay.
It's their dam, but the way I'm looking at it, anybody goes there and tries something, it's gotta help.
That's fine. I was just wondering.
I think I've captured it all in the Excel sheet, and Jamie can double check and, see if she's got it, but I think I've got it here, and I can try to pull it up, and if you got it there, Jamie? Okay. I can compare yours to mine, okay. All right.
The light color for the changes, and then the stripe green for what we omitted.
Okay, she did, I know, that's much better than mine looks like, so, we'll go with that. So this looks like the, SMAC recommendation, again, we'll have to review this at a staff level and discuss and see if there's a concurrent or a mostly concurrent recommendation to bring forward. Can you go up to the top there, Jamie? So I think there was a request to extend clean culling through May, shift the areas, that should be switched around, so that should be area, nope, you got it right, yep, 1 and 2. So that's above the bridge, opening October 15th, closing end of February. Area 3, opening November 1st, closing, that should be first 2 weeks in March, not last 2, I think. So we got our asterisks switched around on that one. Does that sound right? Yep. Okay. And then striking Mob Jack, leaving that leave that in the rotation, so don't break the rotation on that this year. Having York Area 1 open to a month of hand scrape in November. York River Hand Tong area stays unchanged, jumped around a little bit there. Melford Haven, no changes. Deep Rock, Patent Tong area, extend that into March. I think we were talking about talking that in January. Is that right? Okay. So that, striking, that was the discussion for or we were leaving that alone for now, I think, right? Leaving it in November and then discussing any extension in March.
Right,
Yeah, so I have no change on the SMAC recommendation until maybe to January on that one.
right.
Okay. And then I added middle ground to the Rappahannock for, a 2-week season in November. Right.
Area 1?
That would be,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, middle ground, yeah. You know what, I got that on mine there. So that was middle ground for 2 weeks, November 1st to November 15th. And then Larson's Bay, we struck that 1 month, leaving it in just January. Discussing in January for.
Leaving December
Yeah.
and discussing in January.
Was that what we wanted? I thought we struck December and left it in January. Okay, yeah, okay. And then area 4, 2 weeks, end of the October 15th start date. Area 6, no change, we're talking about striking December and discussing or looking at January, kind of somewhere in between there. Have it on the calendar and maybe close it. All right.
Can I ask a question? You said keep it on the calendar for February?
No, discuss it for,
in January, okay.
yeah. Or,
Andrew, when you get to Tangier, I'd like to say something else again, please.
okay, let me just make sure I got area 6 right. They're leaving that on the calendar for February or discussing in January?
Discussing in January.
Let's discuss, maybe shade it a different color or something.
All right.
Discuss it before we do.
You're starting to max out the Excel skills here, but,
I'm impressed, keep going.
I'm not even doing it, I can do it with no hands, yeah, no. All right, and then, let's see, area 8, unchanged, 9, just so folks know, area 9 did get up, the spat set up there has been phenomenal all the way up.
Good, we can open it next year.
It might be. It's been terrible, the spat set up in area 9 has been terrible. Cortoman, Hantong area, that's, I guess we could leave that there. That, again, is a little bit different. So there's some other areas upriver that I'm not sure have much folks, so we can look at redefining that. All right, Great Wacomico, that was a shift to December and January with Blackberry only in February. Little Wacomico, does anyone work in that Little Wacomico area there, Rich?
Just a couple of local boys on bad weather days, not much.
Okay, you gotta stake your ground up then, right? or you know them. Potomac Tribs, Cone, Namanai, Yacomico, that normal 3-month season. Indian Creek, I haven't looked up the numbers, Tommy, do you know if anybody tried there?
I had 2 boats that went there, they got probably 10, 12 bushel, something like that.
Okay, well.
It doesn't hurt anything to be there, so.
Okay. All right, Dan, you ready for, the Beasley Bay recommendation before or after did you want to say something?
I would like to, I thought both of them was gonna be open up in November. I would like to change Kiali to March because most of the people here would rather have it March, but I was, for the ones that didn't and the ones, Beasley's or whatever it is that, Don recommended, I thought they were going to be open the same time, so that way I would like to open up Kiali for March. So if there's nothing to Beasley's, they can run over here, and if, I think there'll be some oysters to Kiali. I think most of the people would rather have it here on the back end.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah.
And the whole reason opening up Horseshoe in November is for the boys to have something to do.
I get that, Don, but I mean, the run clear over to Cali at the end of November, that's a rough time too. That ain't much worse, that ain't much better than December the 1st, and you know how Cali is. I mean, if November is the thing, you're, what I'm getting at is it almost seems like you're wanting both ends. You want Beasley's for March, but you want Cali, I mean, for November. You want something to do.
Tell you what. Open up, forget Beasley's, open up Cali for 2 weeks in November. Would that satisfy you?
No, I don't care. I mean, I'm telling you what our people, what I've talked to, most of them, other than like the one or two that is already hand dredging, would rather have it on the back end.
I can tell you, I don't think I'm gonna be in town, you were saying in March. I was there this year, you missed, 2 days out of 10. I think it'd be better in November. And the whole deal with this, Dan, is giving the boys home something to do from September to December 1st. And you're just taking that away. I understand you all hard crab, but you know as well as I do, when you pillar pot and you try to get a hard crab market, you can't find one. Nobody wants them. And we're just sitting there idle. I'm just trying to get the boys.
All right, that's fine. I'll leave it for November. I mean,
make good money, hard crabbing, I understand that, but you can't fault somebody else for wanting to make money doing something else when you're making money.
I'm not, Don. I'm not faulting that. But why not Beasley's November? Put both of them November. You know what I'm saying? Put both of them November. The last time we talked, and the last time I talked with Andrew, it was going to be 2 places in November. I thought, and that last time I talked, I thought it was Area 9. And I don't care about, I mean, if you want Beasley's March, I could care less, but if
I'd like to see Area 9 and 10 open too, Dan, but it's not gonna happen.
Oh, well. All right, Cali, November, Beasley's March.
November.
Well, and this gives Area 9 and 10, I mean, we talked about it, having, if we do this, kind of either or, it gives you another option for spreading out that effort next year too, so.
Just want something to do for November so somebody can make money. That's all.
I get it. I understand. Look, I hope don't think there's any hard feelings. It's not. As I told you, we're both representing our communities. I get that. I completely understand.
Dan, you guys sail over oysters on sleek cam days that come into Pocono Sound to work, right?
Yeah.
I went to Thurfoot Rock. I had my limit by 8 o'clock in March. And I don't know, I'm just gonna start right now. Just do what I said.
Well, no. No, That ain't gonna stop there, Don. You all had 50-some boats. We had 17. 5 or 6 of them working in this sound. So that meant you had 12 or 13 of us. If that's going to ruin the Pocomoke Sound, shut the whole sound down. Shut the whole sound down. If 12 or 13 Tangermans is going to ruin the whole sound.
Never said that, Dan. I just said people from Saxon need something to do in November. The people.
I understand that. I get that.
Well,
but you're telling me I'm running over oysters when let me tell you something. Me and you's been doing this a whole lot longer than a lot of them 50 boats that's coming out of that harbor. As long as I got that license, and as long as I'm legal, I will run where I want to run.
I understand that, Dan. I understand that. But we need to place the oyster in November, and you have to understand that.
Well, is there...
I've been doing this longer than you, Dan. I was there when it was first opened up for dredging. I'm very passionate, just because we got a lot of boys home that need to make money. And for some reason, you can't see that.
No, I do see it, but I can't. Oh, I'm sorry. It keeps cutting out when I talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, every time I talk, you like mutes to everybody else, so go ahead.
Just one place for boys to work, that's all.
That's fine. Cali, November.
You can't afford to ride to the James River and spend nights in hotels and eat out and make money on 8 bushels. That's why I went after the 10 bushel. But,
I'd be fine with that.
this, and we'll come with it next year, and may the best man win. That's all I gotta say.
Well, I guess just to be clear, there's no desire to have Beasley's Bay concurrent with that in November?
I don't want, if we're gonna have to move Cali to March.
Well, have it concurrent, I guess, yeah.
The whole principle of this is giving the boys something to do before Christmas.
Right.
If you move.
No, you don't have to move Cali to March. Move Beasley to March. Move Beasley to November.
Well, that's what I said. That's fine. Nobody will be to Beasley's in November, I guarantee you, to Cali. I just wanted Beasley's.
I'm serious. I didn't know that's what you were meaning. Cali, November for me. Whatever Don says on Beasley's fine with me too.
We're not gonna go to Beasley's in November because people need to make money. We know the oysters are at Cali. And I was just trying to get Beasley's open up. I didn't want Beasley's open up back in March or I wanted Beasley's to go into this rotation, add it to it for the whole 3 months. So if people want to go there and try it, to catch an oyster, catch it. There used to be a good place years ago. There's some shells there that can be turned over. Maybe would be some potential in the future. I don't see no sense of letting it sit there and do nothing.
Well, one option I think we could talk about is leave it on there now, and put that on the season there in February. So have it open there in February, and you could look at, that could be an emergency extension if you need it in March or something like that.
That's fine.
But anyway, it's good like this too, so.
What I asked for last year was just included into this rotation for 3 months. So, I'd like to see it worked. If there's some potential there to get some shells clean, get some straight, that's what we're here for. Not here to leave stuff pretty well closed. That's a waste.
Well, it is open. It's just, there's other areas that are better, which is a good thing to have.
That's what I told you.
Right,
Nobody's
yeah.
gonna go to Shell Rock, get your limit at 8 o'clock. You're not gonna go to Beasley's Bay when there's a chance you might even catch your limit.
Okay, all right.
All right, so we got it
Let's go.
right there. I think we got the season there. Does that sound
Yeah.
like what I feel I had to carry that forward? Okay.
Differences? Okay, went over here, quite a bit, but, I guess we'll go ahead and have a vote, Andrew, on acceptance of.
And I'll send it out after this meeting there, so everyone can take a good look at it, but there it is, if you can pull that.
One last thing with, previous Commissioner France being sort of the representative to the commission, should the committee have a representative that voluntary, that would speak on behalf of the committee to the commission? Just food for thought.
Yeah.
Stop there.
All right, okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem. I think it's a good idea.
I guess the next thing is a volunteer.
Yeah.
Did you just volunteer? I did not. Food for thought.
And I'll try to send out an email with this, early tomorrow morning too, so everyone can, if we got something wrong, feel free to email back there.
Anybody want to volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, all right, Ben,
To my fellow committee members, staff, and the audience, I apologize for my earlier outburst.
Sorry, everybody can get a little.
I do too. Don, I do too. Don, me and you's friends. I don't want this to end at.
Yeah.
If you're not passionate about this, stuff, you don't need to be.
You don't need to be, exactly.
Like they in the paper, they is doing the same thing,
I
every
move
place
that
I'm trying to do.
these recommendations go forward, Andrew put them out for us to take a look at, and if there's something that's just crazy, call Andrew.
I would second that motion.
All right. Yeah, all those in, nine? No, we vote,
These recommendations be moved forward by the committee.
Do we have a motion?
and then Tommy seconded it, so we'll vote on, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Any more discussion? Okay, Andrew, you got a plan?
All right, we already talked about James River Seed now? No, I was just kidding, say that for nothing.
I know it's late, I got one question, Andrew, I've been asked by a lot of people. The Snag River, is that dead, or are you still considering something going on in that?
I mean, it has been historic hand tong bottom, except for a small area from Tier Point out that was patent tong bottom. There's been multiple large-scale restoration efforts in there.
Yeah, I see it all summer.
Yeah, well, that's a core project there. I don't think you'll be able to work on those rocks.
No, I know that.
But, again, we discussed quota managed areas, vessel monitoring in that area, mandatory reporting daily stuff, and there wasn't really consensus, so if the committee wants to put that on an agenda item, that's something to discuss, how to manage that. Staff could come up with a number of different options to discuss. We'd be definitely willing to look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I think it would be a good idea, you know. Resources there, I know that, so I think it would be a good opportunity to discuss it, bring it up as an agenda item on January meeting. Everybody okay with that?
I agree.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
One more.
Okay, so,
You know, any of the committee members who, you know, if they would like to come to the commission meeting for support for SBAC.
we can, anytime, public comment, yeah.
You know, I think they should be, you know you're welcome.
Yep.
And I would say the same for the watermen out here too.
Yeah, the watermen too, yeah.
Well, Corey comes to a lot of them, yeah, and I've made a lot of them, so.
What's the date of the next commission meeting?
22nd? Fourth Tuesday.
Around the corner.
It's an early Tuesday.
Appreciate Mr. Rice and Mr. Green being here and representing us, a lot of watermen in the state of Virginia, so the fact that there's only two of you here, I appreciate you being here.
Let's give them a hand.
All right, motion to adjourn? Second. That's not committee, is it?
That was unanimous.
Well, thanks everyone for coming and spending a little extra time to discuss.
That means a lot.